Good to be back with you. Guerin, Emig, and Bill Haisten, a couple of sports columnists from the Tulsa World here to entertain you via video at tulsaworld.com. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening to the podcast version, audio only, courtesy of Google, Apple, and Spotify. Bill, since we last spoke, we have spring practice commencing at Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. We have a new basketball coach at the University of Tulsa.
Yeah.
We have a Final Four in place now involving Kansas for the Big 12 Conference, plus an interesting matchup on the other side of the draw. A couple of programs folks may have heard of.
Plus, I don't know if you saw it. You probably did because there wasn't much else going on, and it was riveting. But the UConn women's game.
Oh, last night.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, that was something.
I got to tell you, the women's Final Four is really good too. But I'm telling you, this is the first time I have ever rooted for UConn. They had by their standards, a rough season.
Right.
Best player missed half or 2/3 maybe of the season, and it was not a classic, typical win by 35 every night UConn season. And for some weird reason, I've just kind of turned. And I feel like I'm kind of rooting for Ariema to win this one.
Oh, man, you said the magic word, Ariema.
I'm okay with the guy. I mean, I only had one sit down with him, and he was he wasn't not a warm guy, but those their kids have battled, and here they are, and Paige Becker's back, and she came back from a back. How about that though? To come back in season from a fractured kneecap and a torn ligament, and in season she sustains it and comes back and scores 27 to go to the Final Four. So good stories on both genders.
That's true.
This weekend, yeah.
Hopefully we'll see some good games. I bet we do. Tell you what, let's get back to college basketball a little bit. I do want to circle back to Eric Konkol's hiring at TU because I know you were there for the party they threw on his behalf several days ago. I've been chasing spring football in Norman and Stillwater a little bit. And a topic that I know is always interesting to you when it comes to the Cowboys is Mike Gundy, not just what he says about his team, but how he is toward his administration. That's almost more interesting to check in and see how he feels about the support he's got there in Stillwater. We know it's different to him than it used to be with the arrival of Casey Schrum and Chad Weiberg. And I suppose we see his latest contract revision as a sign of that comfort, correct? Mm-hmm. And what'd you make of that?
Well, I'm able to separate the actual dollar amount from the relationship component of the story, which is, I do believe that I don't believe Mike Gundy ever had a patchy. I don't think there were rough patches with Burns Hargis, but obviously for 10 plus years, Mike and Mike Holder were either at odds or fixing to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One or the other. And so I do believe that Mike Gundy is exceedingly comfortable with the messages he's gotten from Casey Schrum and from Chad Weiberg, and he feels comfortable about their commitment to sustaining OSU and to not just the status quo, but to make it better and to do more with regard to facilities and improvements. Because like Kelly wrote yesterday about, the $40 million renovation, which is going to result in touch-ups around the stadium. Which you think about the skyrocketing labor and materials costs. They built the whole south side of the stadium for $40 million, and now they're doing touch-ups for $40 million for 18 years later. So, but the Mike Gundy money is going to even out at about $7.5 million. There's only 7 other coaches in the country at that level of, as we speak anyway, at that level of money. And so, and the other places have stadiums that seat 80,000, 90,000, at A&M, 100,000, because Jimbo Fisher's on that list. So, you have to separate, well, does Mike deserve to be paid like an elite coach? I say, yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. But does Guerin Emig deserve to be paid $500,000 a year? Yeah. But the Tulsa World can't pay Guerin Emig $500,000 a year.
Right.
You know what I mean? And for that matter, Tulsa can't afford to pay a basketball coach $1.5 million like it did for a while there. They don't have the money. So it does make me wonder whether Mike Gundy might lead the nation now with regard to compensation as it pertains to the percentage of the overall athletics budget.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about 8-9% of the entire budget going to one person. That would be far greater than the Southern Cal situation with Lincoln, or even Alabama with Saban, with regard to, what percentage of the pie goes to one person.
Mm-hmm.
So that part of it, my first question, when he got raised to 5 million, and now when he's raised beyond 7, is, can OSU really afford this, or are they going to pass the burden on to ticket prices?
Mm-hmm.
And is that it? Can the OSU people expect big spikes in ticket prices? I don't know. And maybe it's something I would love to sit down with Chad and talk about and get deeper into the numbers and into the weeds on this. But Mike took a pay cut in the wake of the T-shirt incident. So in a sense, this is a restoration of him back to where he was in money, and then this retention bonus takes him to that $7.5 million. You call it what you will. You can call it a retention or a bonus or a whatever you want to call it. It's still compensation.
Sure.
It puts him in an elite class. I'll never forget talking with him on the practice field 11 years ago about salaries, and at that time he was underpaid. Definitely underpaid. And we decided that Bobby Petrino's money at the time, Mike and I decided that Petrino's money was a fair amount for Mike. And Petrino was making 3.5 at the time. And so we are beyond that by twice as much, only 10 years later, 11 years later. So it surprised me just because, I feel like I have a pretty decent feel for OSU finances, and that's a lot of money.
Yep.
So they're going to, the Big 12 Guerin after Texas and OU, critically important for the OSU people to still put 52,000, 53, 54,000 people in that stadium every week, because that's how they make their bread over there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I tell you what, you mentioned Texas and OU. No, I tell you what this does is it puts Gundy at the top of the heap in the Big 12 on in this regard in terms of compensation. And I wonder, to me, there's money a coach gets, it is always a blessing and a curse, right? I mean, you always want to feel like you're getting your just due. It's an ego-driven profession, so I don't think I've ever heard of a coach turn down a raise opportunity. I get that. It's fair market, all that stuff. But here's the flip side is that it does give the other side ammunition, right? If things don't go as well as, forget the coach, talking about the fans now and the ticket buyers and the donors, it just gives them another bullet to fire if something goes sideways. And when you have a dollar figure that you're not used to seeing attached to an Oklahoma State coach of any sport, that's one thing. When you have a dollar figure you're not seeing another coach in the conference attached to, including OU and Texas, that's a whole different game. And again, this is not to say that Mike Gundy doesn't deserve the raise. This isn't to say I'm not cheapening his accomplishments, in particular the last 5 to 8 years. We actually dated back to 2011. I get it, but there's always a rub with him, it seems, with a certain percentage of the fan base or donor base. And I think he might feel that rub on the chance that there is an underachievement or an underperformance, which is almost inevitable in a coach's cycle. And so that season will come, and it'll be interesting to see what people do with that $7.5 million then.
Right. Well, I mean, Mike capitalized in a big way after the 2011 season with the Big 12 and the Big 12 championship Bedlam victory.
Mm-hmm.
This year, Bedlam victory comes up 6 inches short in the championship game, but finishes in the best possible way against Notre Dame. And hadn't really tied those two together. Mike should try to play in the Fiesta Bowl every year. Big raise every time he does. But yeah, I mean, it surprised me. It didn't surprise me that his money was restored back to where it was on schedule to have been,
Right.
right, Guerin. But the $1 million retention,
Mm-hmm.
that part of it surprised me for sure. But Mike turns 50, believe it or not, because in my mind's eye, I can still see Mike Gundy as a really young guy, and he's still a youthful, healthy guy, obviously. But I mean, but Mike Gundy has been in the minds and eyes of Oklahomans for 37 years, 38 years, whatever, since he was the player of the year at Midwest City. So believe it or not, Mike Gundy this year turns 55.
I can believe it. I'm his age.
Qualifies for AARP this year.
You didn't have to say that because you're talking now you're talking about me.
But he is on a couple of occasions though. When I was on the beat and I would get those walk back to the stadium after practice talks with Mike, and he was always adamant about this. I will not coach at 60. I will not coach.
Yeah.
At 60. Well, at that time, you think, well, that's so far in the future, you know, that it's not a consideration really. That's forever away. Well, okay. If he stands by that, that means what, 4 more Gundy seasons? Mm-hmm. Okay. So this $7.5 million a year burden on the athletic department may not be a 10 or 15 year condition,
right?
Short-lived, and then if Mike does in fact retire at 59 or before he turns 60, then you hire Zach Robinson at half that, and you just roll into the next era. Is what you do.
I'll say this: I saw him before OSU's first spring practice last week and wrote the column before the news of the contract came out. He seems as fresh as ever, man. It's not just Weiberg, right? It's not just the Notre Dame, carryover. And really, it's not just what happened last season with a bunch of guys he genuinely enjoyed coaching. I just think he is really found, and it's funny to say this just a couple of years after we all wondered if he was going to be the OSU's coach after, as you put it, the T-shirt incident. It's amazing the pivot. Right. And the fact that he's gotten back in so many good graces over there and seems to be in a really good place. Speaking of seems to be in a good place, let's transition to Brent Venables over at Oklahoma. And again, Bill, when you listen to Brent talk, you're catching tidbits of information regarding how the Sooners might look this spring and some decisions on personnel. And we're all curious about several of those because it's obviously a new era for OU. But with Brent, as with Mike, to me, you're just as interested in his projection, sort of how he feels about things, and how much he enjoys his new lot in life over there in Norman. He to me, every time he speaks to reporters, it's like the kid on December 25th, right? He's just, can you believe I've got this job? Can you believe I'm finally doing this thing here? So. This is an extended honeymoon period, I think, still going on for Venables. It won't continue, obviously, because something eventually will go wrong, and OU will struggle in a game next fall at some point. But right now, it's easy to sort of track with his good vibes, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I knew it would take a few weeks or months for the wound to start to heal at OU, and then the hiring of Brent was the perfect play for OU. I mean, I don't know anybody who could disagree with that now. So his energy, his message, I guess he's a handful to transcribe, but man, if that's the only complaint, but that's a weak little journalism joke there.
Industry talk is what that is. Yeah.
But I mean, every move, I like the staff. I like the energy. I like Brent's messages. I love that whether it was an intentional counteract to Lincoln's having a moat around the program and I don't know, I wouldn't say a culture of paranoia, but certainly a culture of it wasn't like loosey goosey like it. And it never was totally loosey-goosey with Bob. But I remember going to a lot of practices when I was on that beat. I mean, like, not just glimpses of, but practice. I remember attending, like, game week practices on Mondays. And they would let us watch, like, the last 45 minutes of the Monday practice on game week. And then we would have availability after that. And so for Brent to open it up last week and let, what did y'all get to watch? Close to an hour? 45 minutes.
I mean, it wasn't consequential, but then nothing those guys do in the spring is consequential.
No. It's not about that. It's about just we're going to chill a little bit.
You're right. No, you're right.
No, I thought that was a great play. How are they going to be really offensively? I mean, that's the football question that we just can't know until whatever you see on spring football, spring game day. Wash that away, because those spring games are never indicators of anything. Never. I've seen guys who look like, lottery picks in a spring game, and then they don't even get on the field in the fall. So we won't know until the season how that offense will click with the first. This kid's the first lefty quarterback, right? Since Heupel.
Since Josh Heupel, right?
Yeah. Not very many lefty quarterbacks in OU history at all. In fact, I was texting with Dean Blevins about that a while back. So, does Dylan Gabriel, surrounded by A-list skilled guys, take him to that level? We'll see. We'll see, because he was 0-2 against Tulsa when he was at UCF. Now he's expected to run the table at OU. It's quite a big assignment, but that's why we went there, though, right?
Yeah. No, we'll hear from Gabriel, the media, for the first time in a session tomorrow. So it'll be our first crack to get a sense of how he's felt about the transition and settling in and reuniting with Jeff Levy and whatnot. Bill, eventually we'll hear again from Philip Montgomery at TU. The Hurricane will have their spring game 3 weeks, I think, before TU or OSU's and OU's. They're both scheduled for April 23rd.
TU's is
or is it two? No, TU's is 2 weeks prior, and
TU's is in 10 days.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like the 9th.
2 weeks ahead of schedule. Yeah, 2 weeks ahead of the other two schedule. For the purpose of current events, I wanted to ask for any lingering thoughts and feelings about what you saw at the Eric Konkol introduction. Last time you and I did this, I think we named a few names of possible guys. Yeah, I don't remember Eric's coming across the grid.
He didn't come across my phone really until about, I think the first time he was introduced to me as a possibility, Guerin, was about maybe the Thursday night of the week of that process, which would have been like day 5. And then, but all, not really like a lookout for Eric Konkol, just as a guy, as a name. And then by Saturday, one of 3, Konkol was one of 3. And then by Sunday, it was all pretty much finished. By Sunday, he was in a room with Brad Carson and Rick Dixon. And by the end of that meeting, Tulsa had a new basketball coach, Eric Konkol, Konkol. And I got a call. Basically, the message from a Power 5 assistant was A+ person, A+ basketball IQ, great guy. And these two, he had worked with Eric at one of Eric's previous stops. And,
Gotcha.
And so for this person to reach out and make it known that, y'all should be really impressed and pleased if you can really pull this off. So, but the event on Tuesday at the rental center was was it Tuesday? Anyway, the event at the Reynolds Center the other night was honestly, when I arrived at the Reynolds Center, Guerin, it was cold and it was light rain, and Tulsa had a poor season, and morale was flatlined. And I thought, honestly, and I knew it was an open to the public event, and I thought there might be 50 fans here. There might be a lot of university people, but there might not be more than 50 fans here. And I walked in there and could not believe what I saw. And the final head count wound up being somewhere between 500 and 600 fans who showed up for that. Tulsa served wine, beer, soda, good food. There were merchandise giveaways. There were streamers. There were balloons. The band played. The band was actually there and played. Brad Carson rolls out we think we just hired a Mount Rushmore coach. I'm like, wow. A lot of pressure, Eric Konkol. But it was the most impressive event I've ever attended or covered, non-game event I've ever attended or covered on that campus. And it was very interesting too. And I thought of you too, because one of the people that Eric Konkol had a private brief talk with after the Q&A part was Booker T coach Eli Brown. And so it's so critically important for TU to reconnect with Tulsa high schools.
Sure.
And where do you start with Booker T? That's where you start. And Memorial, Booker T and Memorial, that's where you start. And then Eli Brown tweets after that event, Guerin, I'm excited for the direction of Tulsa basketball. And that didn't cost TU 1 cent.
Yep.
For that kind of marketing, really? So great first impression, great first few days, Eric Konkol. Now you see what you have with regard to roster retention, roster rebuilding, portal activity. So we'll see within a month or so, we should have some clarity on the roster and then scheduling, and then but you won't have to wonder what Konkol's doing. I think he's going to be really active around town and really visible and accessible. And I think after a really demoralizing last season of TU basketball in an empty arena, I just think this guy, and I think too, I'm hearing too that the benefits are immediate with regard to fundraising, reaction from donors and alumni and Hurricane Club memberships and all of it. It just feels like they hit every note correctly that night, and that it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving. So,
yeah.
Great hire. It appears to have been a great hire.
Yeah, and I want to get back real quick to something you said a little while ago about the number and attendance. It wasn't just the weather that night, but you and I spoke in the run-up to the decision that Dixon made about you feel pretty automatic about winning a press conference when you bring back someone like Pooh Williamson, Mike Anderson, a connection to the glory years, so to speak. Guy won't have to work that hard. You bring back Louisiana Tech's head coach that I doubt anyone in the city could tell you who that was before the announcement came that he was the guy. And you still draw that kind of a crowd. Now, again, credit to you marketers for putting on a great show. I hear you. But to me, that also speaks to this TU basketball is still, we have to be reminded of this given the last, 15 years and the looks of the stands in that gym. But TU basketball remains a very big deal in this city. It remains a very big deal to the TU community.
Right.
And they'll back you if you give them, it doesn't matter who you are or who you're connected to. You give them a reason to get behind the program. They'll get behind the program. That's all there is to it. This is still, to me, the window into the university. It's not football, it's basketball to you. And that kind of a turnout for a guy that, again, none of those folks could have even heard of 24 hours earlier leads me to believe that. So now it's up to Konkol to take advantage, I guess, of his graceful start.
Right. Well, he'll even at the end of the media part of that event, I mean, everything Tulsa did was perfect that night. But Ethan Konkol is Eric Konkol's older son. He turned 13 that day. So at the end of the Q&A part of it, two TU cheerleaders come out from behind the curtain. One of them has a beautiful cake. The other one has a gift. And all 500 or 600 people sang happy birthday to that kid. And Bruce Howard on the mic says, Ethan, this is a 13th birthday you'll never forget. And that's how it ended. And I just thought, oh my goodness. It was a sweet moment, great moment, perfect strat. And I was asking around who exactly is responsible for this production. I want to give them credit. And they said, really, it's a group deal. Apparently, Brian Cicelo and Associate AD had a big role in planning the look of it. And but you could tell that literally everybody in the athletic department had their fingerprints on it because they were scurrying around and getting stuff in place. And it was a big production, man. Right there on the floor of the Reynolds Center. It wasn't in the presidential suite. It was in the court. Big curtain behind the podium, the giant video board, which really inside of the Reynolds Center is as prevalent as the video board at AT&T Stadium is to that stadium, you know, from a physics standpoint.
Right.
And it was all shown on the video board. And it just, I don't know. It's as perfect an introductory news conference as it's probably the best one I've ever attended, to be honest. It was perfect.
All right, a couple minutes left. You want to use them to offer our old friend Baker Mayfield any advice, given the bleep show that's going on with him and the Cleveland Browns right now?
Right. I can't. I wish I had said this out loud so that I could. But anyway, but I was thinking this already. But I heard an ESPN guy say this yesterday, and he's exactly right. And I was believing this already. But he said the guy on the ESPN conversation show, and I can't remember which guy it was. But anyway, he said, really, are there 32 quarterbacks better than Baker Mayfield in the NFL? No, there are not. He will be a starter this year. And I believe that too. Now, where he lands is critically important and fascinating. And you see him connected to this team or that team. But it's so important for him because, you know, once you are basically cast in the role of a backup, it's kind of what you are. And I can see Baker, if he chooses to, being in the league a long time, but whether he's in the league a long time as a starter, this season is immeasurably important for him. There's a change of scenery. Although Stefanski at Cleveland, I'm a big fan of him, and I think they finally got it right.
Yeah, for that part they did, for sure.
But for Baker to have sustained stability with a staff and not have Freddie Kitchens this today and Hugh Jackson yesterday and all that movement, and then it is true. It's not an excuse. I mean, he was cut to pieces by injuries this year, and that non-throwing shoulder just, you know, even if it's a non-throwing shoulder, every time you get touched, much less slammed to the turf, it hurts, and pain affects a performance. And so hopefully he gets well, he gets with the right team. You know, he'll be back here in a few days, right? For the statue unveiling.
Statue dedication at the OU spring game. Yeah, my thing with Mayfield is I actually think he still has a shot to make something of this, and the fact that Bill, he's just not a franchise quarterback. I mean, he was a franchise college quarterback. I don't think he's a franchise NFL quarterback. He just isn't, right? And
you mean a guy who can be a starter,
face of the franchise, everything funneled to him. Not a start. I'm not saying starting quarterback. I'm saying this is the franchise now. And when you pick number one overall, whether you're a quarterback or a left tackle, there's your franchise guy. And I just don't think. I just don't think he's. You can personality your way and will your way to some things in the NFL, but you're playing with literally with other pros who, a lot of whom are faster and stronger and bigger than you. And that's the stuff that the attitude stuff that worked at Oklahoma. I just don't. It only goes so far in the NFL. That being said, maybe he makes that work, as I'm going to show you, right? I'm going to show the Browns in this case what they missed out on, and maybe as a starting quarterback, a helpful quarterback, not a franchise guy, is what I'm saying. It's a little bit like Sam Bradford once upon a time, right? Did you get the same maybe impression there? As much as we fawned over Bradford as a college quarterback at Oklahoma, the mistake was thinking he was a franchise NFL guy, and it just wasn't in his wheelhouse to be that.
Right.
So that's my opinion. So,
no, I mean, you always hear the phrase the it factor, and the it kind of from person to person can vary. There can be some variance in what that it is. But it always results in that person standing apart, being distinguished as an alpha type, like you say, the face of the place kind of a guy.
Yeah.
In football. And you may be right.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking with regard to the ability to function in an offense. It was kind of an indictment when Odell Beckham left Cleveland, went to LA and flourished like he did, right?
Right.
I think his play call, I don't think that happens because you just call Odell's number.
Sure.
With frequency. I think it happens because there's a chemistry between Stafford and Odell Beckham. Whereas for whatever reason, apparently there was not with Mayfield and Beckham. So I don't know. I mean, it was a great story for Mayfield to go from walk-on to prominence and the Heisman at OU, and to become what I think I consider to have been the most popular player at OU since 1999. I'm not even sure who would be in second place. I mean,
Bradford would be my pick there.
I see. Oh man.
I remember I still remember Bradford walking off.
You're right.
After one of his spring scrimmages, and there were literally 20,000 fans still there. And you know how bad a scrimmage is by the time you wind down after about an hour and a half, and it's just the freshmen and walk-ons, and they're not doing anything. There were 20,000 fans who stuck around just to try to take pictures of Sam Bradford. I didn't see that with Adrian Peterson. I didn't see that with Rocky Kalmus. I mean, I only go back to 2000, but that was a phenomenon. Nothing like that until Mayfield came along, to me.
Right.
You got another idea?
No. I mean, no, you're right about Sam. Because, plus Sam did what, well, Jason White did it too, but came back as the reigning Heisman winner.
Yeah, that's right.
Gets hurt in the first football game ever played at AT&T Stadium. First football game ever played, I think, right? At the Cowboys.
Oh, yeah, the BYU game. Yeah. Gosh, I think, was that the first one?
First actual tackle football game.
I don't remember that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right, but I've forgotten that.
Yeah. Unless there, I don't think so, though. I don't think there had been like a high school game. So I think it's first actual game that counted at AT&T Stadium, and then he goes down with the shoulder. So yeah, you're probably right. Sam, being an Oklahoma City kid and the reigning Heisman winner, and then coming up just short against Florida, in the championship game. So yeah, I could see that. But with regard to, if you think about this, the last glimpse that OU fans got of their beloved Sooners in person, they were watching Tyreek Hill run back a punt. Right. And at that point, there was a lot of movement, not in the worst kind of movement at the quarterback position. And you get beat at home in Bedlam, and then the next time that OU fans see the Sooners, Lincoln Riley's play calling it, and Baker Mayfield your quarterback. it wasn't official until August that Baker was, but
right. No, yeah, no, for sure. For sure.
But so I think Baker was the right guy at the right time, kind of a quarterback for OU. Yeah. And no doubt, I mean, wherever OU was on the swagger index, when Tyreek Hill was running that punt back, Baker put them right back where they should have been. So he was the master of restoring swagger at OU, and he and Riley, no question, had amazing chemistry. You know, they go from a really difficult, not very satisfying 2013, 2014 seasons to in the playoff. Right there, first year with Baker. So yeah, I think Mayfield was far and away the most popular guy.
Yeah. And now
more, I mean, probably because the sale of merchandise wasn't as prevalent, certainly 30, 40, 50 years ago. But probably more number 6 OU jerseys sold than any other, maybe more than any other two combined in OU merchandise sales history. So yeah, Baker Mayfield will always be a rock star here.
Be interesting to see how many fans are wearing Gabriel jerseys at the end of next season, and along those lines, because you talk about an opportunity to sort of seize the moment at that position.
That's right. If you want to gauge an approval rating on an athlete, that's how to do it. Yeah, are people willing to spend $49.99 or whatever, $79.99, whatever a licensed jersey costs to wear the guy's gear? If they're willing to do that, then they love the guy.
All right. I tell you what, we'll pick up where we left off next week. A little more spring football talk. Maybe we'll know where Mayfield has landed by then. We'll see what his arc presents us.
Today is a great day for me personally because it's my first game at One Oak. Every year.
We got Bedlam baseball tonight.
Well, you got Bedlam baseball tonight. So I end up in a typical year, I'll go to between 10 and 15 or sometimes close to 20 games altogether at One Oak, which is just my favorite ballpark. And so weather seems like I guess we've got a chance of rain tomorrow, but not tonight. So we got baseball tonight at One Oak. So
enjoy it.
Yep.
Cowboys looking to make it 11 straight. Is that right? Or is it
12? They
12 straight.
Come in at 11. Yeah. And Josh Holliday is 27-9 against the Sooners all the time. And Josh Holliday is 8-3 at One Oak. And Josh always, he prioritizes winning at One Oak at a high level. He thinks it's very important to win in Tulsa. So, and OSU's really good. Statistically, they're the best defensive team in the country. And their ERA is 2 runs better per game than the Sooners. So it looks going in like another OSU victory, but that's the beauty of baseball. You know, especially midweek baseball, because you have to kind of go directions with your pitching that you might not otherwise.
All right. Well, eat
a conference game, right? This is not a conference game.
Right.
This is an exhibition.
All right.
Wagering.
Well, eat a driller dog for us.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm really excited to be back at the ballpark. Yep.
All right. Listen, thanks, Bill. Have fun tonight. Folks, thank you very much for tuning in. We will give you more of this next week. Please enjoy the weather and the spring in the meantime.